Hi, everybody. Welcome to the April 2026 Sharp Information Session. As you know, Sharp, we invite speakers to offer information sessions about resources, services, and tools to help English-speaking older adults age in the right place. I'm Denise Beaton. I'm the Program Manager for Seniors at CHSSN, and I will be your facilitator for today's session. I'd like to start by thanking all of the English-speaking community organizations in Quebec, the SHARP coordinators and older adults who have joined in today. If you have any questions about the presentation or the resources provided, you can contact the organization or the person who invited you to today's webinar. So today I'm very pleased to share that we have Matt Del Vecchio here with us to discuss important topics as we age, including aging at home versus making the move, how to effectively age in place, expected costs for home care and senior living communities, dealing with downsizing, decluttering, and transition processes. Many older adults are also supporting a spouse, a sibling, or a friend, so this information can be just as relevant from a caregiver perspective as well. Matt is the owner of Lianas Senior Transition Support and Premier Home Care, and he provides guidance to families and loved ones throughout the aging process. He's also host of a popular radio show called Life Unrehearsed on CJAD 800 in Montreal. And he's a certified professional consultant on aging, a CPCA, and is also on the board of directors of Nova West Island. So we're so pleased that he was able to join us today and share his expertise. Matt, I'll hand it over to you to kick things off.
And Denise and Megan, thank you very much for the invitation. This is a presentation that I do quite often, and really appreciate the opportunity to have right across the province. We all seem to have similar challenges with a healthcare system that is struggling I'm trying to be polite here, but it is really struggling as our population ages. And so hopefully you'll get a little bit of information in today's presentation that will help out, whether you're a caregiver or you are looking for yourself, or you might just be looking for a friend, a neighbor, or a family member. Just a quick little recap, and this is very helpful in terms of the presentation, because we're going to be covering a lot of information. And Megan or Denise, I don't know if you make this presentation available to everyone, but there's going to be, I'm trying to cover everything throughout the entire aging process, if you will. All right. As Denise mentioned, in Montreal, the largest English radio station, in fact, in Quebec, is called CJD. Some of you may be aware of this. And I've had this show called Life Unrehearsed. It's been 9 years now. It is now aired on the last Sunday of every month from 4 to 5 p.m. And I talk about the topic we're talking about today quite often on the show. It seems to be gathering more and more interest because life is indeed unrehearsed. And we get thrown our curveballs in life. And no matter who you talk to, everyone has something going on in their lives, whether it's themselves or a family member or a loved one. And this is a show that tries to address some of the challenges we face and talk a lot about what we're going to be talking about today. So to go through the presentation, I'm going to talk about some of our aging population, how to effectively age in place or age at home, even longer perhaps, some of the transition trends in Quebec. I get a lot of questions about, Matt, what's the difference between the public and private, and how much does it cost? So I'm going to be focusing on that as well. And we're going to wrap it up with some downsizing tips for those that might be considering some downsizing. That last question in the poll, I'll be addressing some of that. And then, as Denise mentioned, I guess we'll have a quick little break, quick coffee, tea, stretch, and then we'll get into our Q&A. All right. I mean, everyone's aware of this. Our population is aging. In fact, the next 20 years will see the fastest growth of our population, age 65 and over. In fact, it's a 50% increase in 65 and over in the next 20 years. 50. What's most interesting is if you were to do the next 20 years for that age bracket, it's only a 9% increase. So really, it's the next 20 years, the boomers are reaching the 65 and up range, and so we're getting a lot of questions about this topic, these topics that we're talking about today. All right. We often get asked, what do we do? Do we age in place or downsize? According to the poll, 2/3 wanted to age in place, and 1/3 wanted to or looking into downsizing, or may have already downsized. And so we're going to address both of these topics. What do we need to do to effectively age at home, in place? We do want to enjoy our homes, whether that's a home or a condo or a townhouse, wherever you are living. In order to do that and to age in place longer, some very simple services are getting popular. You may find just the housekeeping part of maintaining the home becomes difficult, and to find a cleaning person, that service is really growing in Quebec. Yes, it does come at a cost, but I could tell you, this one of the questions I get the most. Do you know a cleaning person, Matt? And it's a hard job. There's not very many cleaning persons available right across the country. But housekeeping, landscaping, if you've got a house and people are engaging the services of landscaping, home maintenance and repairs become an issue. And so finding that handy person to do that. And even since the pandemic, I never would have thought this would be here, but many people are ordering their groceries and their pharmacies online. And that was one of the silver linings of the pandemic, that people are more comfortable with ordering groceries and pharmacies online. That's helping you age in place longer. Now, the next level is wanting to make sure you're creating a safe and a secure environment in home. So you could do a few things. I'm going to talk about some very simple home modifications that we can do that aren't too costly. And then there are other heavier renovations and major work. So for example, if all of a sudden you find that your a spouse or a loved one or yourself is in a wheelchair, well, now in a wheelchair at home and you've got to navigate stairs just to get into your home from the outside, that becomes a challenge. So you may need to invest in some renovations like ramps. You may need to lower countertops or widen doorways. You might have a bathtub at home and you might have to get a walk-in shower. These are bigger renovations. A chairlift in the stairwell. Those are bigger renovations. So know that they exist. There's also some tax credits for that as well, but I'm going to talk about more of some of the simple ones coming up in just a minute. And if you have access to an occupational therapist, either through the CLSC or you engage the services of a private occupational therapist, we really encourage that. What an occupational therapist will do is they'll go into your home and do an extensive home assessment, and they're going to put some recommendations. They're going to raise the red flags of areas of concern and ultimately help you age at home longer. So certainly we recommend the services of an occupational therapist if you can get that done. Now here are some of these more inexpensive things you could do at home today. I'm going to go by the top left-hand corner. You see that what we call grab bars. Okay, so grab bars are becoming very popular. One of the poll questions we should have asked, because most people will get it, where do most slips and falls occur? It's in the washroom. All right, so grab bars, as you become maybe a little bit more frail, a little more weak, are becoming popular. Grab bars in the shower area, in the bathroom area, near the toilet, and that's always a popular home modification. I want to emphasize that a towel rack is not a grab bar. Okay, and too many people have found out the hard way. You do a little slip, grab that towel rack, and there you go. That's not going to support your weight. Grab bars are truly lodged right into the wood of the wall behind it, and so it's very much more secure than a towel rack. The middle top right, we've all seen these, maybe with our kids, little night lights. Here's a very inexpensive modification. And as we age, well, we tend to get up in the middle of the night, perhaps to go to the washroom. It's only normal as we age. Well, what happens in the middle of the night? One, we're a little lightheaded. We're not fully into it. And two, it's dark. So a little night light is always recommended as you find yourself perhaps going to the washroom in the middle of the night. On the top right-hand side, we've got these pull rugs, as we call them, or matting. Some people just love their rugs and matting. It might even be from a trip they did in the past, and there's some emotion attached to it. This is a high risk factor for slips and falls. We suggest one to remove them completely, but if it's just too dear to your heart, then you know what? Get them uh, either double taped, double-sided taped down. Remove those little rabbit ears, we call them, at the ends of rugs and carpets, and really get them flat to the surface. On the bottom left, for people, most people still have a bathtub in their bathroom, not have the convenience of a walk-in shower. So these shower chairs, these transfer benches are becoming quite popular. Try to get those through the CLSC or through a medical equipment supplier. Middle bottom, hand railings, always recommended. Especially if you've got mobility issues and you've got to navigate stairs, and if you have the luxury of having a wall on both sides of your stairway, get hand railings on both sides if you can. And then the bottom right is a seat riser for the toilet, and it can help you transition with those higher grab bars on both sides of the toilet. That's also becoming popular. So there's a couple recommendations, not too expensive, but these will help you live at home longer. Now, above and beyond some home modifications, this is an important part of staying at home longer. The ability to provide proper care and get proper care. So what do we need to do to try to get you more care while living at home? First of all, family. Usually, if you are in a couple's relationship, a spouse takes care of their spouse. I have yet to meet a couple where their care levels are the same, whether it's physical or cognitive, so one will advance more than the other. So tap into family if you can. Not always easy for many people on this call, I'm sure, that might not have family around, but usually most people start with family, some children, spouse, loved ones. Next step, CLSCs. We've got those right across the province of Quebec. Some people today might have CLSC services. Some people may have experienced the challenges we're seeing every day with trying to access CLSC services. Not easy, but that is part of our healthcare system. Some people will engage the services of a home care company. There are many home care companies across the province. It can get costly, but some people will, if they're not getting enough service from the CLSC, they'll engage the services of a private home care company. And the last one, which is quite important, I would say the most important part, is caregiver support. Too often we forget about the caregivers, meaning the person taking care of someone sometimes ends up getting sick before the person they're taking care of. Okay, so know that there's more and more caregiver support out there, communities, municipalities. We're going to talk about this a little bit more at the Q&A, but it's the old, if you go on an airplane and they talk about that oxygen mask and put it over yourself first, same thing for caregiver support. Self-care is so important if you're providing care for someone. Now, how do we access support at home to help us stay there longer? First and foremost, I've talked about the CLSC. Okay, your typical CLSC services, what they're doing these days is perhaps weekly bathing. Some people who are living alone and may have some cognitive or neurocognitive disorders, taking medication on time and in the right quantity is absolutely crucial. Sometimes the CLSC will go in to do medication management during the day, in and out, providing medications. Sometimes they'll do morning preparation, evening prep to make sure you get up okay, get to bed okay. So those are some of the typical services by the CLSC. I want to mention, and this is in most regions, maybe not necessarily in all regions, but there is a program called Chèque Emploi Service that the CLSC doesn't advertise too much, but I want to let you be aware of this because Chèque Emploi Service, it's the government recognizing that there's not enough resources to get services through the CLSC. Labor is a major issue. Chèque Emploi Service means you're getting an evaluation by the CLSC and they are assigning a number of hours during the week. For example, 8 hours a week or 10 hours a week, where they will subsidize a caregiver that you hire. So it allows you to bring in your caregiver and not rely on a CLSC caregiver that might be inconsistent or doesn't show up. And they will pay that caregiver somewhere to the tune of around $20 an hour, and you get to hire that consistent caregiver. So I just want to bring that to your attention. If you are considering some CLSC services or in the process, ask about if they've got a chèque emploi service program. That might help out. Now, for those who want to access private home care, I get this question quite a lot. What's involved? There are many home care companies out there. A little more difficult in the regional areas to find good home care companies, but they're out there. And you could expect certain daily and weekly minimums with home care companies. One of the big benefits, though, is you are going to get a consistent caregiver versus a CLSC where they have tremendous turnover. You'll have different people. That's important for people, particularly if you have a family member or loved one with some form of dementia or Alzheimer's. You need consistent caregivers as opposed to different people through the course of the week, which could be more stressful and anxiety-inducing for someone with dementia. Typical hourly rates will be in the range of $37 to $40 per hour with private home care. I will say the government is supporting families that are using private home care services now to the tune of about 40%, which is significant. It's around $18 to $20 an hour they're going to subsidize. This, again, you do have to apply for this. If you're over 70 years old, you will be able to apply for it. It is somewhat income dependent, but many people qualify for the 40% tax credit for private home care services. So I will need you to be aware of that. All right. So again, we're following along the aging process. We're in our 50s, 60s, 70s. We're living at home. We're hanging in there for as long as possible. But you know what? We may be considering a downsize. Some of you have done this. Some of you aren't even close to that level. And some people might be exactly in this stage right now. So here are some of the reasons we're hearing why people are downsizing. This is feedback from actual clients that we have. Number one, physical. If you are in a home and you've got multi-levels and stairs are just becoming too much to navigate, that bathtub is becoming really difficult. Physical issues are one of the reasons why some people are downsizing. They want to go to a condo or a retirement home on one floor, no more stairs. Another reason why people are downsizing is cognitive. This is a little bit more difficult. Cognitive, like dementia or dementia-related diseases like Alzheimer's, will usually build over time. It's not like, if you fall and you break a hip and, maybe you go to the hospital and you get fixed and you're, in a month or two, you're better. With cognitive decline, this is difficult for the person and the caregiver because they're kind of following along this path. So some people feel that when it becomes too much to care for someone with cognitive decline, or if you're living alone and have some form of dementia, another reason to downsize. We've talked about this, and we get this a lot. If the caregiver becomes overwhelmed, this is another reason for downsizing. Safety and security. Sometimes it's just becoming a little too dangerous living at home, or you don't feel as confident or secure when you could be in a retirement home where they do have nurses there. They do have the receptionist. If something's wrong, you could press a button and you're more secure. So that's a reason for downsizing. Loneliness is a big popular one. We saw this in the pandemic, how loneliness affects people. And perhaps you've lost a spouse. A spouse has passed away or a loved one has passed away. And so loneliness is a reason to downsize. And this last one we get a lot. You know what? We are just fed up of taking care of the house. The roof is leaking. We need a repair person all the time. It's just too much. And as we age, these repairs, we could do them when we're younger, but we're getting a little fed up of maintaining the home. So this is a big reason why people are downsizing, the burden of home ownership. Now, the question we get often is, okay, maybe we are ready to downsize, but where do we go? And so, few options for you. If you want to go from downsizing from home, you can go either to a smaller home or a townhouse. Um, if you're moving though for mobility reasons, a townhouse is not a good option. Townhouses by nature are narrower and higher. You're actually increasing levels in a townhouse. So you'll see that in a townhouse, um, not a good option if you've got mobility issues. However, if you go to a smaller home, one level, that could help out. Condominiums and apartments are becoming very popular. Some people like the condominium. You do have condo fees, and some people prefer just to downsize to a regular apartment instead of the house. Many people are just going from home right into a retirement home or a senior's residence. I'm going to talk a fair amount about this. And when health really declines rapidly, some people are going right from home directly into a nursing home, or in Quebec we call them a CHSLD, Centre d'Hébergement de Soins de Longue Durée. So there's a few options. So I've mentioned the smaller homes and the townhouses. Try to get it on one level. That's the benefit again of condos or 55 plus apartments. In retirement homes in Quebec, they're referred to as RPAs, Résidence Privée pour Aînés. There's three types of retirement homes. Independent living, well, this is basically like a condo living. You have your own kitchen, you're living your own independent life, but you have access to a dining room and healthcare services and maybe a convenience store and a pharmacy. It's independent living surrounded with different amenities, activities, and a good social environment. Assisted living, there are actually some independent living retirement homes that have an assisted living floor, and there are some retirement homes that specialize in assisted living. Typically in assisted living, you're going to get all your meals, your housekeeping, your laundry, maybe even your medication management. You're going to be more surrounded with care. And then memory care is retirement homes or sections of retirement homes that specialize in dementia and dementia-related diseases, Alzheimer's, Lewy body, these types of things. And then as I mentioned, nursing home, again, that's the high level or long-term care, soins de longue durée, SLD is longue durée, and usually that means more than 3 hours of daily care. If you have difficulty transferring out of bed, if there's full incontinence, if you're in a wheelchair, maybe there's full bathing assistance, and you just can't take care of yourself anymore, then it might be at the stage of nursing home. All right. Some of the benefits of retirement homes that are the considered social benefits, we've talked about that. Certainly, you could be a total introvert. Not a problem, but you could still be in an environment that you know, even around the circumference, if there's an activity or a concert, something going on. There are significant social benefits, and you've probably all heard from a mental health and well-being, social benefits are so important. Healthy living and proper care. You know, you're going from a home, if your care levels are increasing, now you're going to be in an environment where you can have some proper care for you and not have to worry about going outside. The atmosphere and environment, big plus for retirement homes. You know, it's just not your lonely condo or lonely apartment. There's stuff going on, and always good and improves the well-being as well. Obviously, the safety and security there in retirement homes as well. Again, every retirement home, in the bathroom, in the living room, in the bedroom, you're going to have these buttons or pull cords. You're not feeling well, you pull the pull cord and someone will come to see you. We reinforcing one of the big benefits of retirement homes, of course, is ending that burden of home ownership. I get asked, you know, what does it cost? You know, it costs a lot in private retirement homes. And the answer is yes, it does depend on budget. But here's what you can expect in retirement homes. I've given really broad numbers, and I'll explain why. First of all, across the province, it will vary by real estate. But independent living, you're going to be in this $1,500 to $3,500 range. Why is there a big range? Because there are several factors contributing to the cost. If you go, there are studios where you don't even have a separate bedroom. There's one bedroom options and two bedroom options. Every time you bump up to a room, you're adding about $700 per month for that extra room. So that's a big, real estate is one of the considerations. And also meals. If you want a meal a day, that's going to cost about $450 per month in a retirement home. Okay, so those are the two biggest costs in independent living. The real estate, you'll have some additional costs, maybe if you need housekeeping or indoor parking, but that's why you're going to have in that range of that amount of 1,500 to 3,500. Assisted living, you're getting a lot of these services. The housekeeping, you're getting all your meals, as I've mentioned, and the laundry, the medication management. That will range between $4,000 to $6,000 per month. And then memory care and long-term care, there's a lot of labor involved, a lot of care. So that's why we get into these really high amounts of anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. There is some government money in there, some government credits. If you're over 70, you may be eligible for up to about 10 to 15% of the monthly rent. So just for a quick little hypothetical, if you're paying $3,000 a month for in a private retirement home, you might get back around $400 on average every single month to deposit into your bank account. And the reason why is the government's acknowledging there's long waiting lists in the public sector and nursing homes, so they're trying to support the private retirement homes. Other considerations, if you are going to be moving from a home, if you're in a home, bear in mind all those property taxes, school taxes, water taxes, they're all gone now when you're moving into an apartment or a retirement home. You don't pay those anymore. Usually in retirement homes, your hydro, your gas, your hot water, that's all included. Many of them include your cable and your phone and your internet. And there's no more home maintenance when you're in a retirement home. So these are significant costs that will help you from a budgeting perspective if you do decide to go to a retirement home. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit. There's no such thing as a public retirement home. Okay, in our healthcare system, the only public residences are nursing homes. And there's a couple types. The most popular one that we hear about is Centre d'hébergement et de soins de longue durée, CHSLDs. The level below CHSLDs are ressources intermédiaires. It's called RIs. Okay, it's still high levels of care. We're talking long-term care, usually more than 3 hours of daily care, but these are our public residences. How do you get into the public residence? Again, the only way to get in is through the CLSC. I've talked about the private retirement homes, and maybe in Q&A we could talk about that. There are many agencies, free services that can get you into private retirement homes, and they don't charge for their services. They're reimbursed by the retirement homes. However, the only way to get into a public home is through our CLSC. Admissions are based on priority, okay? Some people think, okay, I'll get on the waiting list and it's first come, first serve. That's not the case. And I'll give you an example. If you have, let's say, a 97-year-old lady living alone with heavy Alzheimer's versus an 82-year-old gentleman, some mobility issues, caregiver, his spouse at home, applying for public nursing home, and will be accepted, who's going to get the higher priority? Well, obviously it's going to be the 97-year-old women, full-blown Alzheimer's. And, quite frankly, I agree with that, even if that person was later on the list. So it is based on priority. There are long waiting lists. Plan on anywhere from about a year to 2 years in the city of Montreal. It could even be 3 years at some public CHSLDs. But I will say this, and I put this in here intentionally because the pandemic was very, very difficult for the entire province of Quebec and the entire country and the world for that matter. If there was a silver lining, it put a spotlight on how we were treating our elderly. Not good. And since the pandemic, the government has put a lot of money into long-term care homes. So you will get good care in CHSLDs. Is it perfect? Far from it. You still need to check in on your loved one, but it is much, much better than pre-pandemic in terms of public nursing homes. Here are the costs anywhere in the province of Quebec in a public nursing home. Individual room is $22.42 per month. That means a private bathroom in an individual room. Sometimes there are shared, it's 2 to a room where you're sharing a bathroom. That drops to $18.72. And then if there's three or more in a room, that goes down to about 1,400. But I will say this, since the pandemic, the government has got rid of most of those CHSLDs with three or more beds in a room. You know, respiratory disease and what showed in the pandemic, they're trying to eliminate that. So usually the two more popular options are semi or individual private rooms. Okay, that's the price right across the country. That includes all your care, all your meals, everything all in. Okay, now again, following that aging process, we've decided to downsize. Or maybe we're still in the process of thinking about it. Here's what we can do to help with the downsizing process, and I'll wrap it up with this. Why less is more? If ever one day you need to sell your home, the buyer does not want to see a bunch of clutter and all your stuff. So you want to start decluttering whenever you can. Why less is more? You want your place, first of all, for your own peace of mind, if you're walking through all this clutter and trips and fall hazards, and it will give you a little mental relief when there is less is more. Start early. Even if you aren't planning to move, start early. Everyone, as we're talking right now, I know everyone's thinking, you know what, I could probably get rid of this or that. It's in the basement, it's in the garage, it's just been there. Don't want to deal with it. Start as early as you can to start downsizing. 6-month rule. Now, what that means is, what have I not used in the last 6 months? That's a good way of challenging yourself to see, do I really need this? Now, we're in Canada, we're in Quebec, we have our winters. Don't start getting rid of, your shovels and your winter coats and your boots. We need all that. But are there things that we haven't used in the last 6 months? Do we really need 4 sets of bedding for the spare bedroom? Do we really need 3 extra sets of dishes? Start thinking about things you haven't used in the last 6 months. Do I really need it? And start one room at a time. Sometimes when you start downsizing, you do a little bit in one room, a little bit in another room, and a little bit in another room. Next thing you know, you've actually created a bit of a hurricane, and you've got stuff in every single room. Start one room at a time. And we always recommend create 3 piles. One is the yes pile, meaning I need this. I cannot part with this. It may be frames, it may be memories, it may be stuff that you're going to need when you're moving to your new place. Second pile is the maybe pile. You know what? I'm on the fence on this one. I'm not sure. And the third pile is the no pile. No, I don't need this. I'm going to get rid of this. Now, the rule number 1 with the no pile is, do not go for a tea or a coffee. Do not go for a break. Do not start pondering what's in the no pile. Get rid of it that same day, because you know what's going to happen. You're going to think a little too hard, and some of that stuff in that no pile might make its way back to the maybe or yes pile. So no pile, it's got to go. Where does it go, though? So we always recommend start with family. And we see a lot these days, and it's very frustrating for, someone in their 70s or 80s, let's say, who came from nothing and worked very, very hard for every penny. And they got this beautiful bedroom set, or this nice big dining room set, or a full collection of the Royal Daltons and different things. And they're insulted when their kids don't want their belongings. And it's really sad in a way, because you worked hard for that, and the kids are saying, well, look, we just, China, I don't want to polish the silver every few months, that we don't do that anymore. Or we're in a smaller apartment, we can't bring in this big dining room set. So start with family, but we always like to give with a little grain of salt. It's so difficult when some family members or friends saying, no, I don't want your things. Okay, so know that not all family will accept. So now you have to start thinking of extended family. Maybe there's a neighbor, maybe there's a coworker, or someone where they have a student that's going to Ottawa, or somewhere that could use a couch or a lazy boy or some piece of furniture. So think of family as extended family. Some people will do estate sales and garage sales. You're not going to become rich doing that, but it will be a good way of decluttering and getting rid of some of your items. Donations are getting more and more popular, especially for those items that your kids don't want to take, but you're not comfortable throwing out. You spent thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars on something. People are donating, and it makes them feel a little better that it's going to a family in need. It might be a refugee or a first generation immigrant that you're helping out by donating your goods. And if they're after all this, and you've tried the family, you've tried the sales, you've tried the donations, and it's still there, you simply have to discard it. Discard it either in the garbage or in 1-800 got junk. There's some organizations that will collect your stuff and repurpose it. But ultimately, it would need to be discarded. All right, I think that's it for my part here. This is just the two organizations here in Montreal that we take care of. I have a home care company that provides home care services, and Lianas helps with finding retirement homes, a free service. There's many people like Lianas across the province. And I do have my contact info here, and we won't leave this long, but I mean, with Denise and Megan, if anyone here needs to talk to me one-on-one, by all means, they could reach out. Feel free to do that. And I know we're talking about Q&A. The reason why I put this here in the Q&A, it's general questions, but you may have a personal question that you're not comfortable asking in front of the whole group, and this is why I've got my contact info there to try to help out and respond or give you a little guidance.
The first question is, does a senior living community include a 55 plus apartment building?
Yeah, so let me explain the difference. A 55 plus apartment building is more a property manager or an owner that wants to have, we'll call it seniors.
Mm.
55 and over. So there's not kids running around all over the place and families. I have yet to see a 55-year-old at a 55 plus apartment building, quite honestly. It's traditionally 60, 70-year-old, but they are an apartment building. So when you see something called apartment 55 plus, it is strictly an apartment. There are very little services. There's no care services. There's no nurse. You might have some common areas. You might have a gym, but it's not an RPA, résidence privée pour année, or a retirement home, a senior living community. By nature, a retirement home, they have to have care around the clock, someone there in case someone's not doing well. They have to have a dining room area as well, and they'll have to have the security features, and many of them will have access to pharmacies or convenience stores, and certainly activities. So that's the difference between a 55 plus, which will typically be less expensive because you're not paying for all those other services, but don't expect a 55 plus to have any care services available or a dining room.
And then the next question is around multi-generational living. Can you discuss that a little bit about how that can be a choice to support aging in place?
Yeah, we're actually a little bit behind in Quebec with multi-generational living. There's some places across the country with multi-generation buildings, and so it is a good concept where you can both sort of live in your separate areas under the same roof and have multi-generations there. So we're seeing that it generally tends to be by family as opposed to a larger building with multi-generations. And so it's encouraged. I just would want to mention, though, is with multi-generation, many people start with that with good intentions. But with the aging process, care needs start to increase. And the multi-generation concept all of a sudden is, oh boy, is this the right move that we did? So for example, if someone has cognitive issues and is considered a flight risk or a wanderer and should be in a secure environment but in a multi-generation home, and they're going out in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter, when the levels of care reach that level, multi-generation now starts to become questioned. If your care levels, if you can't transfer, if there's full incontinence, and just to be quite frank, I've had people say, listen, if it reaches to the stage where I have to start changing diapers and cleaning up, I'm not doing it. And that's another thing with as care increases with multi-generation. So I encourage it. I think it's quite important. Moms and dads certainly prefer multi-generation, but I always try to make sure you have the caregiver perspective, the adult children's perspective, where the intentions are good. If you can do it for a few years, just be aware that down the road, future may become more difficult.
Yeah, and younger adults who have children often really appreciate having the older adult living nearby to help with childcare. So I think that's something to consider too, right? You have to think through
Absolutely.
those practical pieces early on, like having a separate or flexible living space if possible, because the older adult doesn't necessarily always want to be on deck for childcare, right? You have to clarify who's responsible for what day to day, how costs will be shared. And it's also helpful to look into things like home adaptations, municipal zoning for secondary suites, and there also may be tax credits or supports. So I think a thread throughout all of your presentation has been that aging is a process, things change, so make sure that it's an ongoing conversation. And I think that's the same for this situation.
Yeah, Denise, just want to elaborate a little bit on more. You're bringing up a very important point, something we talk about as essential conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those essential conversations. Again, there's hypotheticals, the intention, the feeling is good, but you do need to have those essential conversations and get into the weeds a bit. So you brought up a point is, it's nice to have mom and dad to take care of the kids, but try to figure out where those boundaries are. There will be certain limits as to what parents or grandparents want to do. And so that's one of the many essential conversations that families could have.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the next question is around the tax credit for spousal caregivers. Would you be able to elaborate a bit on that?
Okay. Um, uh, yeah, and I noticed there's a question about the person's income, but I'll address this specific one, tax credit for spousal caregivers.
Mm.
Now, there are some tax credits provincially for caregivers and federally.
Mhm.
Okay, they're changing all the time. So my only suggestion, if you don't have the luxury of having an accountant, who's the first person you should call, or your financial advisor, then it's a simple Google. If you Google, are there caregiver tax credits available in Quebec? Are there caregiver tax credits available in Canada? You will be redirected to the sites where you can get some caregiver tax credits. And I'm also going to give the name of a company. I've had them on my radio show a couple of times, and it's called Alisa Refunds. Alisa. Alisa Refunds. This is a wonderful husband and wife company. They don't charge you for their services. The only way they get paid is if they find tax credits for you that you weren't even aware of, and they will take 20% of those credits in the first year. So it's a wonderful service, and I've had these guys on my show, and the phone doesn't stop when they're on, because it's a wonderful little organization. There's no cost. If they don't find anything, there's no charge to you. Okay, so
Mm.
that's another avenue to find out, hey, am I missing out on some tax credits? Okay, so that's another good one.
Yeah, and as Matt mentioned earlier, maybe even if you don't identify as a caregiver, it's worth looking into. Many people
Mm-hmm.
supporting a spouse may be eligible without even realizing it. Let's move on to the question around government aid being related to a person's income.
Yeah, so I talked about two tax credits in my presentation. One is for home care. If you're getting home care privately, you could have access to some tax credits. And also, if you're in a retirement home, there are some tax credits as well. It's under the same umbrella within the government. And there's two factors. One is age, 70 and above, and the other is income. So, the general rule of thumb is if your annual revenues are under $68,000 a year,
Hmm.
talking annual revenues, it has nothing to do with your assets. You could own your home, you could have a bunch of RSPs. If your annual revenues are under $68,000 a year, you typically get 100% of that tax credit that's available. And then there's a scale that goes up to about $200,000 in annual revenue. If you're making more than $200,000 in annual revenue, the government is saying you're okay. There's no tax credits. But there's a scale between 68,000 and 200,000. So if you're bringing in, I don't know, $100,000 a year, you're still going to get a tax credit, but it might only be about 60% of that tax credit. Okay, so it's actually a pretty generous program.
The next question is talking a bit about the current state of uncertainty that we all live in. Since the war began, I watched my savings go down a bit, taking into consideration the costs involved with moving and rentals and RPAs. Should I postpone any big decisions until that situation is more stable? Matt, can you discuss a little bit about how to navigate this uncertainty?
Yeah, Lorraine, it's a very good question because I think you were speaking for almost everyone. One of the questions I get is like, my goodness, am I going to run out of money? Like, I just don't know. One thing I always recommend, if you happen to be fortunate and have a financial advisors are getting this exact same question from their clients. Challenge them and ask them to provide you with a 2-year projection, a 5-year projection. Hey, if I move into a retirement home and it's going to cost me $3,000 a month, can you do a projection for me? They're doing this now more and more. So start there. If you could stay at home longer, if you happen to be fortunate and own your property, in all likelihood, your property is going to gain in value over the years. So if you could postpone it, great. However, and just because I see this every single day in the world we're in, working with adult children and seniors, you always want to be proactive. And if you're still in good health and it's just starting to be a little much at home, you want to be in a position, because every retirement home is going to do their own evaluation. You're going to meet with the head nurse and they're going to do an evaluation for your physical and cognitive needs. While you're in good shape, that's usually the time to make the move, and don't wait too late. Don't wait until it's crisis mode. I can't tell you the calls. I've gotten 3 calls just during our time. I picked them up really quickly during our break. 2 of them for the call I don't want to get. In the crisis mode, mom's in the hospital, can't go back home. Matt, we need a place next week. We can help, but those aren't the fun calls to get. So if you're in a good position health-wise, try to delay it, enjoy your home, but try not to wait too late. Try to, if you're considering it, and take advantage of a wonderful retirement home where you're going to take advantage of all the amenities that are there. And if you're not sure financially, hit up your financial advisors to see, you know what, maybe I can do this. I've had many people do that exercise, and they've come back to me and said, you know what, I'm actually okay. I'm better than I expected. Now, that's not the case with everyone, but sometimes there's going to be some surprises that maybe I can do this. And so hit up your financial advisor to do a projection.
I have a few of my own questions, and of course, I'll prioritize any that folks pop in the chat. But I'm wondering, for those who may be supporting a spouse, family member, or friend, what happens if someone can't afford the monthly fee in a public nursing home?
Yeah, so this is a question I get quite a bit. So if you recall, I gave the costs in a public nursing home. So in a private private bathroom in a public CHSLD, the cost is $2,242. I often get, you know what, should I give an early inheritance to my kids, because I don't want to show the government that I have money in my bank account. That $2,242 in a public nursing home is the monthly fee, all in. That's the maximum you will pay. So you don't have to worry about getting rid of your assets. If you can afford to pay it, the government's saying, great, pay it. If you can't afford to pay the $2,242, you're living alone, all you have is a very basic pension. In Quebec, you will never pay more than what you're bringing in on a monthly basis if you're in a nursing home. In fact, they have to leave you a couple $100 disposable income on a monthly basis. So you have the right to apply for a tax subsidy if you can't afford the 2242 monthly fee in a nursing home, and you will never have to pay more than what you're bringing in. And they can't go after your kids either.
Mm.
Spousal income is important. If your spouse is still alive, that comes into the picture. But if you're alone, they cannot go after your children, the next generation. So you apply for a credit, a subsidy, so you're not having to pay more than what you're bringing in, which is what we are in Quebec. It's, a social society protecting our each other.
Yeah, and my understanding is that no one is denied access due to inability to pay. The process is coordinated through the CLSC, which also manages placements. So starting early is important as there are wait times. My next question is around caregivers. So we know that many older adults are supporting others or will at some point in their lives. Are there any organizations that you want to highlight that provide resources and support for people in those caregiving roles?
Yeah, so it's kind of reinforcing what we've talked about. I love L'Appui, an excellent
Mm.
organization. Start with CLSC, as well. Again, not so easy to access, but CLSC can be a good government resource. And some of the ones we've mentioned, also Proche Aidance Quebec, very, very good.
Mm.
Educalois, if you're concerned about, Diane mentioned that in her comments for sure. And then, of course, we've got 811 if need be for some health care. And those are important ones that we'll deal with. Now, I also encourage you approach your municipality as well. Local communities and local municipalities they're more and more having some seniors groups, some caregiver groups, and so on. So depending on where you live, approach them. Locally here in Montreal, I'm on the board of directors of Nova West Island, giving a ton of free services to the public in
Mm.
Montreal. So really approach your local community and local municipalities as well. There might be something there.
Great. And speaking about free services, can you talk a bit more about services that help find senior living communities at no direct cost? Can you tell us about how those work?
Yeah, so you saw my logo at the very end, Lianas Senior Transition Support. I am part of a provincial association called the Association des Conseillers d'Hébergement du Québec, Association of Housing Counselors in Quebec. We're right across the country. There's over 30 organizations. It is a free service to help you find the ideal senior living community in the private sector. Again, if you need to go into the public sector, none of us have a choice. We have to go through the CLSC. But some people aren't at that long-term care stage. So no, there's companies just like Lianas right across the province. I would suggest Googling ACHQ or Association des Conseillers d'Hébergement du Québec, and you'll find one locally near you.
Okay, great. And when someone's thinking about their own future or supporting somebody close to them, you mentioned important conversations. We talked about this a little bit in the multi-generational household example. Can you talk a bit more about other types of important conversations families should be having around aging and planning ahead?
Sure, I'll focus on a couple of here. First of all, if I could wear a legal hat for a second, Denise, maybe you addressed this in a couple of presentations. You know, is your will done?
Mm.
50% of Canadians still don't have a will updated. Make sure your will is up to date. Do you have a power of attorney? If something happens to your spouse and you've got to start paying bills and take care of the day to day, and do you have something called a protection mandate? A protection mandate is essentially saying, if ever I become inapt, I'm assigning so and so as my mandatory to take care of my affairs. I don't want the government taking care of stuff. I want to assign. So legally, wills, power of attorney, protection mandates.
Hmm.
Other conversations, and these are difficult conversations with children and with moms and dads. We all love our family, but we've seen too many times in my world where the tough get going, the care needs are really increasing. You should have the conversations with your family as to, if your care starts increasing, what do you want to happen to yourself? Do you
Mm.
want to go to a residence or do you want to stay at home? But if it becomes too hard on your spouse, are the children ready to pick up the pieces? Are the children ready to provide care at home? Very important conversations Because even though you might want your children to take care of you or your spouse to take care of you, they might not want to, or vice versa. They say, yes, absolutely. I'll leave my job even, and I'm going to take care of you, mom or dad. So these are conversations. So there's no surprises, not if, when we age, we're going to need care. So it's better to know in advance rather than being in crisis mode, like me getting that phone call just in the break saying, mom's in the hospital, what do we do? Okay, so try to have those conversations with your folks, with your kids, as my care needs increase.
Hmm.
And very
Hmm.
important.
Yeah, and it's a great way to make sure that your preferences, where and how you want to live, and what matters most to you as you age are really centered in those decisions instead of waiting for a crisis moment.
And
Um,
Denise, I'll just
mm,
add one thing because sometimes they're sensitive topics, right? Some
hmm.
people don't want to address. I'm not going to bring this up at the Christmas table. We were having fun, and
Yeah.
you're going to be a downer. We always recommend to look for trigger events. Okay. A trigger event could be a fall and someone's hospitalized. I told you were going to fall, and it happened. A trigger event could be you're listening to this presentation today. Hey,
Mm,
I heard, I participated in a presentation. They talked about this. A trigger event could be a neighbor or a friend or a family member that was recently hospitalized or just transitioned to a retirement home or went into a nursing home. Hey, Mrs. So and so just did that. I'm wondering what we would have done in that situation.
mm.
So look for trigger events to help with these essential conversations.
Yeah, and you can even tie it to a certain time of year, right? April, we do taxes. Maybe in May, you update those conversations based on what might have changed in the last year. Speaking of trigger events, the next question is around from the chat. What happens when a couple owns a home, but one spouse needs to go into a CHSLD after a stroke, for example? How do they manage to pay for both?
Very good question and a very real situation. In the eyes of the government, if you own your home and you're still married, and this is even common law, it's considered your dual income.
Mm.
So that $2,242 needs to be paid to the government for that nursing home. So if you can afford to pay it and continue to live at home, then that's what you do. Some people say, you know what, this is crazy. I'm living in my big family home. My husband or my wife is in a nursing home. It might be time to downsize, one of these trigger
Mm.
events. And one other option that is getting more and more popular is some people are taking out a reverse mortgage on their home. And if you own your home, you can access up to 55% of the home's value in the form of a reverse mortgage. So if you have a home worth $500,000 and it's paid for, you can access probably $250,000, $260,000 in a reverse mortgage. You don't have to take it all. If you only need 10,000 or 20,000, you could do that in a reverse mortgage. And reverse mortgages, you don't pay anything until the house is sold. But you are paying interest somewhere to the tune of 6 or 7% on a monthly basis that will be accumulating until you sell the property. But some people just don't want to leave their home. They're cash at their house rich, cash poor, and then reverse mortgages are becoming more and more popular. In Quebec, most Canadians do that. The rest of the provinces are doing a lot of reverse mortgages. In Quebec, it hasn't become popular. But just to let you know, that option is a financial tool that's available.
Hmm. Yeah, it's good to hear about all of the available tools. This is a very real situation for many couples, as Matt mentioned. I would like to add that in Quebec, fees for public long-term care are based on the income of the person entering the CHSLD, not the couple's combined assets. And there's protections to ensure that the spouse remaining at home is not left without resources. That being said, it can still feel like a financial strain, especially with ongoing home expenses. So it's important to plan carefully. You can connect with the CLSC or, if possible, a financial advisor or social worker. Generally, there would be a social worker assigned to the spouse in that transition between hospital and long-term care to help you understand how the costs will be calculated and what supports or adjustments may apply in your specific situation. And then last in the chat, we have a comment. I signed an MDA, an organ donation, and advised my family about it. I think this ties into what we were talking about, Matt, around having those decisions documented and communicated to your family as a really important step. Um,
By the way, the MDA medical directives, Quebec is leading the country. Um, you just Google, medical directive Quebec. There's a form, an online form that you can complete, and it's registered in the province. And it's excellent, very simple to use, and that's another one of those essential conversations. You're deciding on what type of care you want.
hmm And then the last question is one of my own. So when you mentioned downsizing, one of the options was to donate to charities. When I moved to Montreal from Vancouver, we donated to charities that supported refugees, and we were able to receive an official tax receipt, which we used to claim a charitable donation tax credit. Can you talk a bit about that option?
Yeah, there's very, very few now
Yeah.
giving tax receipts for goods. Okay,
Mm,
but there are many organizations, and again, it's very regional, unfortunately. But I don't know if it was Welcome Collective that you use for refugees. That's a very popular one called Welcome Collective.
mhm,
It is, but again, it's going to be more in the city for that one. But that specifically supports refugees.
mm.
There's Renaissance in many, many places where you could donate goods. The Diabetes Foundation, actually, they'll go to the porch in parts of the province and pick up your stuff. Again, regional areas will be more difficult, but it's quite popular. I would also suggest, again, reaching out to your municipalities and your local senior centers. They're always a good source because there, many people who are downsizing are looking to. I have to do a shout out for Nova, West Island. They have these wonderful thrift shops, and 100% of the proceeds go to the nursing services of Nova. But that's just, again, a regional example. There could be other examples out there to help locally.
Great. Yeah. And you can always ask the organization in advance too what they accept and whether they provide receipts, as policies do tend to vary. All right. Well, I think that concludes today's Sharp webinar. Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. I hope you will share what you learned with someone else, whether that be sharing the video that comes after or just in your conversations. Maybe you're going to have a one of those critical conversations. So I also want to thank our Sharp community coordinators and Megan for our technical support today. And on behalf of all of us, a huge thank you to Matt for taking the time to share his wealth of information. So
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Denise, Megan, so well organized, great attendance, and great questions, and really appreciate and honored to be able to speak to everyone.
that concludes our Sharp webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.